果てなのになんでこんなに名コンビ？恐怖の妹。
Did you know that there are 2,538 different articles detailing lost media on the Lost Media Wiki? There are a lot of things out there that haven't been preserved. That number is only a mere fraction of what's out there. And, you know, there are a lot of things out there that just haven't been preserved. This number is only a mere fraction of the things that have been attempted to be preserved. What may be among the most bizarre yet somehow fascinating pieces is a Japanese analog TV shutdown. Something so simple yet somehow very complex. A topic that people in Japan have dissected and flocked to. Perhaps it's the somewhat frightening analog horror element to it. Maybe it's the finality of the shutdown itself. Perhaps some nostalgia mixed in. What exactly makes it Japan's most mysterious and renowned TV shutdown? One that spawned a search 14 years in the making for footage that may not even exist. Well, let's find out. It's pretty safe to say that many of you are already quite familiar with Nickelodeon. This television station was a cartoon staple for many children over the past 30 years. And this goes back even further if you include the station's humble beginnings as Pinwheel and the later small beginnings as a premium children's educational network in the 1980s. Nick was truly in full swing during the 1990s when many of their most memorable cartoons and live-action shows had aired. With the station flourishing, Nickelodeon began to expand and introduce its content to other countries. Among those being none other than Japan. It was in the year 1998 when Nick Japan was officially launched. So how did this Japanese variant differ from the American incarnation? Not by very much, honestly. There were unique bumpers and the television programs themselves were dubbed into Japanese, but aside from that, it's pretty much the same Nickelodeon. No Japan-exclusive programming or anything like that. Now, there was a Japanese-exclusive programming block known as Mystery Zone. However, it featured mystery shows that already aired on Nickelodeon in English. So, the only huge difference being the programming, of course, being dubbed into Japanese. And let me tell you, Nickelodeon put a great effort into dubbing every show. So great, in fact, that they even dubbed Nicktoon shorts and live-action shows as well.
真面目な助手。
お願い僕を巻き込まないで。笑いが止まんねえ。
全く正反対なのになんでこんなに名コンビ？恐怖の妹メガンも健在。頑張れブラザーズ。
That's right, Drake and Josh has an official Japanese dub, guys.
いつでも楽しいのが大好き遊んでいたいのでも地球がピンチになればすぐに生きて戦うわ
Some programming retained the English openings, however many had the opening dubbed in Japanese as well. One confirmed example is My Life as a Teenage Robot. And a large number of these dubbed episodes are just lost now, as the more obscure and forgotten programs never received any home video release. I mean, 100 Deeds of Eddie McDowd had a Japanese dub! I feel like I'm the only person to ever remember that show at all. Nobody I ask ever remembers it. Also, Legends of the Hidden Temple aired in Japan, and I can't find any footage of it or anything in relation to it like promotional material or bumpers. In Japanese, that is. And, of course, there's a Japanese dub of Jimmy Neutron.
足首が見えない大変だ目が見えないんだ
The exact number of shows dubbed and aired on Nick Japan is pretty much unknown. I mean, looking into every individual show, especially before the internet, would be quite the task. For a lot of the original programming, you'd probably have to look up TV guide listings, old promotional material, stuff like that that you just can't find anymore. Despite this, a good number of shows have been confirmed to air on Nick Japan. The list, while not complete, paints a pretty good picture. A lot of long-forgotten shows were dubbed and aired in Japan, and that's pretty cool. Oh, and a lot of the original 90s bumpers were confirmed to air on the channel as well. There were also bumpers unique to Nick Japan itself. While also really cool, the majority of these bumpers are now just lost. In short, Nick Japan pretty much mirrored American Nick. Some shows did well, others did not. It remained this way for 11 years. As those 11 years went by, Nick Japan steadily declined in viewership. There is no definitive reason as to why Nick Japan was doing so poorly. However, a lot of the hyper-westernized cartoons that Nick offered at this time may have been lost on some. This isn't proven. I mean, many Western cartoons do extremely well in Japan. Disney movies, Peanuts, and Moomins, to name just a few. But I can certainly see why the aesthetic and setting of some of the shows wouldn't be as appealing compared to Japanese children's shows airing at the same time. I mean, compared to flashy anime like Pokemon, One Piece, and Doraemon, and even Super Sentai and Kamen Rider. From a cultural standpoint, some Nick shows just may have not stood out. There are shows that did extremely well, however, SpongeBob being the best example. We'll discuss that a little bit later on. September 30th, 2009. Exact time, around midnight, though not confirmed. This was when Nickelodeon Japan officially went off air. And it was also around this time when discussions surrounding the shutdown footage had begun. Was there some kind of significance to this date? Well, yes actually. This date was actually implemented by Viacom as the final day to use Nickelodeon's iconic orange splat branding. Something that had been used since the late 1980s and was created by the same exact people who invented the early MTV branding. Since the branding was receiving a major overhaul following this date, and because Japan wasn't a part of Nickelodeon's family of networks moving forward, this was likely why this day was chosen. And how did this shutdown go about? Pretty suddenly and without much warning, which adds to the intrigue felt by so many in Japan at the time. Or at least the devoted Nickelodeon fans. Among said fans was a blog writer that wrote a play-by-play while watching the shutdown. This blog post by a user named Sukaponta was written the day of the shutdown. While rather brief, it does provide information from someone who watched Nick Japan and witnessed the shutdown firsthand. This user writes the post 1 hour prior to the shutdown itself and continues updating in real time. They mention that Ah Real Monsters was on, then immediately followed by My Life as a Teenage Robot. They then mention a short cartoon is airing in the final minutes of the station's final broadcast. They express how surprised they were about Nick Japan shutting down with a short as its final send-off. They then mention the station cuts off abruptly after the short. They were at least hoping for some kind of thank you for watching message, but that was it. Also included in this post was an image of the bumper that played leading up to the cutoff. While this blog post was simply a fan expressing their grievances, it would go on to spark intrigue among Nickelodeon fans in Japan and elsewhere. And this wasn't the only blog post recounting the shutdown. 2 days later, a Rakuten blog written by a user named Katrina also expressed frustration in the sudden and final shutdown of the channel. This blog provides 2 images. A different screenshot of that very same green dinosaur bumper, and the screen after the channel went off air. Around the same time, in early October, a 3rd blog post was also discovered, this one also showing that screen after the channel shut off. In the years since, not one but multiple candidates claiming to be the shutdown had surfaced online. The very first being only 1 day following the shutdown itself. Not gonna lie, this one kinda creeps me out. It's very sudden and jarring. What you would see in your head when expecting a television shutdown. I mean, being a kid and seeing this around midnight, it would probably scare you, or at the very least stay in your head for a little while. Many assume the shutdown to be the real deal, though quite a few things are a little off about it. First of which being the footage itself. It shows the MTV logo and SpongeBob, 2 things the blog posters never mentioned. That little green dinosaur is nowhere to be seen. And then there's those color bars. While associated with analog TV, what was shown in that second blog post was a channel offline screen from some kind of satellite provider, not analog. It is likely that this footage was fabricated, but how can this be proven for sure? While Katrina watched the shutdown from a satellite provider, analog TV was still used in Japan up until 2011, making this version of the shutdown also possibly real. So, does that mean there were multiple shutdowns? Possibly. And it wasn't until 2016, years later, when yet another alleged recording of the shutdown was uploaded online. And here's yet another one with color bars. Rather than a sudden cut to them, the station first cuts to black with the channel watermark in the top right. Then, the color bars kind of fade in. I don't know if it's just me, but the way they kind of fade in looks a bit fake. This one kind of looks like it's intentionally made to look creepy. And let's not forget about the dinosaur and how it's nowhere to be seen in this one here either. From this point onward, people became further entranced by this mystery, and the search began branching out overseas, particularly with those in the lost media community. Something about the images on those blogs made people feel like the footage was out there. I mean, 3 blog posters provided images of it. Plenty of people in Japan enjoyed Nickelodeon's programming to want to do that. That much is clear. And trying to validate the 2 videos already out there was also a priority. Maybe other TV providers that aired Nickelodeon could be tracked down. And thus, the search continued. But, at long last, what may be the most significant find had surfaced in March of 2020. Anything here look particularly interesting? Perhaps this little green lad right here. That's right, it was finally after all these years that shutdown footage featuring everything the blog posters had mentioned had surfaced publicly. That very first poster we talked about mentioned that the last show to air was a short. This recording shows the credits to a Nicktoon short known as Bull and Red. Next, we see that dinosaur bumper, and then the channel unavailable screen from the TV provider. And in case you were wondering, it's been confirmed through the footage and blog posts that this specific provider is Sky Perfect TV, a satellite TV provider in Japan. So, does that make the other 2 fake? Let's go back to that discussion regarding the TV providers. With a little digging, it can be found that Nickelodeon was originally introduced to Japan as a premium network via DirecTV Japan in 1998. Though, in 2000, its official satellite TV provider became none other than Sky Perfect TV. And with even more digging, it's discovered that Nick Japan was later available on 4 other networks in addition to this, these being listed as broadband providers. This is all found on an archived version of Nick Japan's webpage. There's also a separate area for cable providers, saying to contact your cable TV people directly to see if Nickelodeon was provided through them. So, those other 2 admittedly more creepy shutdowns actually do have a shot at being real. As a matter of fact, members of the Lost Media Wiki were eventually somewhat able to conclude that the first shutdown screen, the one with SpongeBob, most likely was footage from the broadband provider Hikari 1. And you know what that means? That there could be a lot of different versions of this shutdown footage out there, and the ones found already could still be fake. There could be many different versions of this shutdown that are out there and just not documented and unable to be documented because who was there to record them? There's even a bit of doubt with the 3rd shutdown footage, as real and ideal as it appears. I discovered this after contacting Blue Frog TV, the uploader of that shutdown footage. You see, Blue Frog originally recalled finding that footage in an unlisted playlist for Nick Japan back in 2016. They recounted the word hoax being in that original upload they came across. A user even commented on the 2020 upload of the shutdown, claiming to be the 2016 uploader and saying that they made the video and that the footage was fake. Despite these claims, this didn't really add up to Blue Frog TV for a number of reasons. One being that it was later found out that each TV provider actually shut off the stations at different times. Some providers shut Nick Japan down a little early. There's also how difficult it would be to actually obtain and create this footage because, at this point, Bull and Red wasn't found online and didn't air on every Nickelodeon station. In short, getting all that footage, the Sky TV screen shutting down the channel, and the watermarks and all that would be pretty difficult. So... heck, all of these could be fake. I mean, there is no way you could definitively, without a doubt in your mind, prove any of these recordings are real. I mean, that dumb thing I put in the beginning of this video, I made it. I mean, it doesn't look very professional, but I just kind of spliced together a lot of Nick Japan footage and footage I found that looked creepy with like SpongeBob characters, and I was like, you know what? Anyways, you can't really ask Nickelodeon if this is real or not. They can't confirm it. You can't go back and ask these TV providers if it's real. They probably don't know or really care. It's kind of that niche. You can't really get a 14-year-old piece of footage of a TV shutdown PSA graded and made real, you know? What? That's kind of what makes it so interesting. As far as what's agreed upon in the lost media community, or rather those interested in this one specific piece, the Sky Perfect shutdown with the dinosaur is real. It's simply a satellite TV variant. The SpongeBob footage with the color bars is believed to be real as well, just a broadband TV version of the shutdown, provided by Hikari One. There are varying opinions, however, and still a lot of debate within this little community. I mean, look at this. As far as Nickelodeon's Japanese presence after the shutdown, different popular shows were moved to other networks following its closure. iCarly later aired in Japan, but on another network. SpongeBob, the show that really took off in Japan, moved over to MTV Japan and NHK. And, in 2018, the new and improved Nickelodeon Japan. That's right, Nick Japan did actually come back in 2018, though unfortunately the channel had a very brief run and shut down yet again in 2022. SpongeBob still airs today on those other two networks I mentioned though, and it's still going strong. In all honesty here, I don't think SpongeBob will ever die. Ever. And if you are wondering, that 2022 shutdown isn't lost, and that's because this version of Nickelodeon was provided digitally. There isn't much mystery to this one. And there you have it, friends. This is the story of the Nick Japan shutdown. One of the most bizarre, yet somehow interesting lost mediums I have come across in my career of looking at lost media. Other versions of the shutdown may very well pop up in the future, and you know what? Those will probably not be confirmed to be, you know, legit either. It's very likely that all of them will never, ever be recovered. I mean, again, how are you going to know how many exist in the first place? But with all of that said, officially on the Lost Media Wiki, the Nick Japan shutdown is considered officially partially found. As far as those Japanese dubbed shows that aired on Nickelodeon Japan, there is a list of ones that are completely lost that I found online. Here's that list. And you know, who knows if these will be recovered ever. These are kind of older niche shows I remember watching when I was a very, very small child, and you know, I don't know how well they did in Japan. I don't know if they have access to these dubs anymore or even have interest in releasing them, like on streaming or through DVDs or Blu-ray. Anyways, that is it for today, my friends. Hope you enjoyed learning about this little weird mystery as much as I enjoyed learning about it, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye for now.